Once upon a time, in the flourishing kingdom of Le Hua, where jade towers touched the clouds and the fragrance of plum blossoms filled the air, there lived a young maid named Mei Lin. Mei Lin served in the Emerald Palace, a place where every servant moved with the elegance of silk, except her. While others bowed gracefully before the nobles, Mei Lin's bows were legendary for all the wrong reasons. Crooked, clumsy, and often accompanied by a flying hairpin or a falling teacup. Mei Lin, trembling and determined to impress, stepped forward with a tray of tea. Her knees shook, her back wobbled, and as she tried to bow, however, her hairpin fell. The tray tilted dangerously. The tea rippled to the edge. Gasps echoed. But before disaster struck, a strong hand caught the cup. Mei Lin looked up right into the emperor's gaze. "Who taught you to bow like that?" he asked softly, amusement glinting in his eyes. Mei Lin stammered, I practiced with a broom, Your Majesty." The ministers stiffened, expecting punishment. But instead, the emperor chuckled, a sound no one in the palace had heard in years. "Then perhaps the broom is wiser than my teachers," he said. "Rise, maid who can't bow." From that day on, Mei Lin's name spread across the palace. Some called her lucky, others called her foolish. But to the emperor, she was something else entirely, a spark of warmth in his cold, jade world. Each day, she tried again to perfect her bow, always failing spectacularly. And each time, Emperor Li Qingshan found himself watching a little too closely, smiling a little too softly. In the kingdom of Yuehua, where power and grace ruled above all else, a humble maid's clumsy bow managed to bend something far greater, the emperor's heart. And perhaps it was the start of a love that the emperor never knew was coming. He just loved looking at her, knowing how well enough, how close he wanted to be around her. She was just different, unique from all the women he had seen. He couldn't place a finger around it, but he wanted to be close to her, and he was just about to do all it took for her to be his. Once again, morning broke over the Eastern Palace, a palace so vast that even whispers could travel faster than wind. The courtyards gleamed with dew, the servants hurried in silence, and the cherry blossoms trembled on the trees. Except for one maid. There she was again, Mei Lin, holding a tray like it was a sword she never learned to wield. "Mei Lin, careful with that tea. You walk like the floor owes you silver." Mei Lin lowered her head in embarrassment, stepping carefully. But even her careful steps were chaos in disguise. A few maids nearby giggled behind their sleeves. Mockingly, one jealous maid said, "Oh, look, our royal duckling is learning how to walk again." Another said, "Maybe if she bows enough, the emperor will teach her how not to drop everything." What she didn't know was that from behind the silk screens of the West Hall, Emperor Li Qingshan was watching. Hidden behind bamboo shadows, he had grown fond of the maid who couldn't bow, not for her grace, but for her honesty in clumsiness. Li Qingshan, thinking quietly, said to himself, "She spills more tea than she serves. Yet somehow she stirs my heart." That afternoon, the noble Lady Jia entered the courtyard, a woman whose pride could outshine the sun itself. All maids bowed deeply in reverence. Except one. Poor Mei Lin, halfway down, her hairpin fell off, the tray shook, and the teapot wobbled like a frightened rabbit. Lady Jia said coldly, "Are you mocking me, servant? Even your bow is disrespectful." The air froze. The other maids gasped, some in fear, most in delight. One maid whispered, "She's done for this time. Maybe the emperor will have her sweeping the horse stalls next." Mei Lin panicked, trying to balance the teapot, but it slipped, flying straight into the air. Everyone gasped. Then a single hand reached out, swift, calm, and steady. The emperor caught the teapot before it shattered. Gasps fill the courtyard. Li Qingshan, softly, smiling. Even the finest porcelain needs a steady hand, as do my servants. He set the pot gently back on her tray and nodded, walking away as if nothing had happened. But for Mei Lin, her heart had already spilled. That night, the servant quarters buzzed like an angry beehive. One maid said, "Did you see how close he stood to her?" Another, almost in what seemed like a mockery, said, "Close enough to smell her cheap jasmine oil. She's probably planning to trip into his arms again tomorrow." But Mei Lin said nothing. She sat quietly by the lantern light, clutching the hairpin that had fallen earlier. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the memory of his voice. Mei Lin, whispering to herself, "A steady hand, even for me." And somewhere beyond the palace walls, the bamboo rustled, as if the wind itself laughed softly in agreement. In the servant quarters, gossip had reached a boiling point. Lian, the chambermaid, said, mocking, "I heard she served tea to His Majesty himself, and he smiled." Smiled? Do you know what that means? Qi said mockingly, "It means we should start practicing how to trip in front of him too." The maids laugh, one pretending to fall dramatically, causing their buckets to spill. Their laughter echoed through the corridor, just as Lady Jia, the Emperor's favoured court companion, passed by. Her fan froze mid-wave. Lady Jia, coldly, "Who is this clumsy girl that makes my Emperor smile?" That afternoon a royal decree was sent, not to nobles, but to a maid. Mei Lin was summoned to serve tea in the Lotus Pavilion, the Emperor's private retreat. Her hands trembled as she entered. The Emperor sat by the window, sunlight painting gold on his white robes, a scroll of poetry resting on his lap. Li Qingshan, smiling softly, "You bow less each time I see you, Mei Lin. Are you rebelling against the throne now?" Mei Lin, stammering, "No, Your Majesty. It's just that my knees and the floor are not friends." He chuckles, a sound so rare even the bamboo seemed to listen. Li Qingshan, "Good. I've had enough of those who kneel too easily." He poured tea himself, for her, and that day laughter replaced formality. For once, Mei Lin didn't trip, though her heart surely did. But peace never lasts in palaces built on pride. Lady Jia stormed into the pavilion without warning, silk robes sweeping like thunderclouds. Lady Jia, furious, "Your Majesty, has the dragon of the East fallen for a servant who cannot even bow properly?" Li Qingshan, calmly, "At least she does not bow to deceit." Gasps echo from the maids nearby. Lady Jia, trembling with rage, "She will ruin your name, Your Majesty. Do you think love can survive in a palace built on rules?" Li Qingshan, soft but firm, "Then perhaps it's time the rules remembered love." Lady Jia turned sharply and left, her pride heavier than her jewelry. But as her footsteps faded, so did the last shadow over his heart. That evening, the Emperor summoned Mei Lin again. The courtyard shimmered under lantern light, and soft rain began to fall. She entered nervously, clutching her robe, hair slightly damp. Li Qingshan, gently, "Do you know what they call you, Mei Lin?" Mei Lin, embarrassed, "The maid who spills everything?" He smiles, shaking his head. Li Qingshan, "No. They call you the maid who made the Emperor laugh. That is a gift greater than gold." He handed her a small, delicate box of jade. Inside, a new hairpin shaped like a blooming lotus. Li Qingshan said, "Whenever you bow, let this remind you. You need not be perfect to be precious." Tears filled her eyes as thunder rolled gently in the distance. And though rules forbade them, hearts have always bowed to something stronger than power: love. In time, Mei Lin became known not for her clumsiness, but for her courage. Whispers turned into songs, and even Lady Jia, from afar, admitted defeat to a smile she could never earn. And every spring, when the emperor walked the bamboo grove, he would pass by a young woman serving tea with the same trembling hands. Only now, they trembled not from fear, but from joy. For some love stories in the palace do not begin with grace, but with a clumsy bow, a fallen hairpin, and a heart that refused to kneel to anything but love.